Well, hello everybody, and happy Earth Day. Today is a very special day for my family and for me, and I suspect it is for many of you as well. As a lot of you may remember, our nation first celebrated Earth Day in 1970. And 54 years ago, I was a young naval flight officer stationed near San Francisco and preparing to deploy with my squadron for the first of 3 tours of duty in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War. And as our nation tackled challenges around the world, environmental crises at home were worsening. The Cuyahoga River in Ohio had become so polluted it literally caught on fire. And we're also witnessing the ever-increasing pollution of our air, of our land and water from factories and industry across our nation. So on April 22nd, 1970, millions of people across our country rose up and came together in response, committing to fight for our collective future. I was one of them. And from that day on, we've celebrated Earth Day each year as a reminder of how far we've come and what's at stake if we don't continue the fight. The world looks a lot different today than it did in 1970. The Cuyahoga River is now a thriving ecosystem for more than 60 species of fish. We have the Environmental Protection Agency, and we have bedrock environmental laws that are protecting us and our planet. There's still a lot more to do to address climate change and our warming world. Today we see the mounting threats of the climate crisis, wildfires ravaging our lands, droughts parching our ecosystems, floods leveling our communities. Fortunately, we can do something about all of these things, and as it turns out, we are. Last Congress, we passed the most transformative infrastructure legislation since the advent of the interstate system, bipartisan infrastructure law. This law actually included historic investments in our nation's highways, bridges, drinking water and wastewater and infrastructure, electric vehicle charging, ecosystem restoration and recycling, and a lot more. And not long after that, Democrats passed the most consequential clean energy legislation for our planet's future, the Inflation Reduction Act, part of what I helped to write. Through this bill, we secured nearly $370 billion, that's billion with a B, in climate dollars, in climate and clean energy investments, which will help us dramatically reduce emissions across the U.S. economy and our planet. And thanks to the Biden administration and its work to implement these laws, we are beginning to get closer to meeting our climate goals. In fact, just last month, the EPA announced that they'll be taking historic steps to rein in emissions from the cars, the trucks, the vans that we drive each day. And one might ask, why is this such a big deal? Well, the reason why is because the transportation system, the vehicles we drive, happen to be the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. economy. My staff and I have a lot of work ahead of us to build on the successes of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Kigali Amendment, and much, much more. And the good news is that we're actually able to agree on a lot in Congress when it comes to protecting our planet. This Congress, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, has passed several bipartisan bills to protect our environment and address climate change, including the ADVANCE Act, the America's Conservation Enhancement Reauthorization Act, the Prove It Act, the WILD Act, the Recycling Infrastructure and Accessibility Act, and the Recycling and Composting Accountability Act. And we're just getting started. Well, I'm going to continue working with my colleagues across the aisle and on our side of the aisle and with the administration to advance legislation to protect our one and only planet. I often say that every day ought to be Earth Day, so it brings me much joy when the opportunity rolls around once a year to say Happy Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. The best is yet to come.